No.
I don't know, maybe you just read them on, maybe somebody has trouble with that.
We've been off all day.
I'm sitting late at the end of it.
We're almost on some candles.
Yeah, thanks anyway.
Budget nights for romantic.
I brought my pumpkin, not my candles. Although I do need a candle for the pumpkin eventually.
We're getting the disco ball.
No, the lights.
That's,
Get the
yeah,
lights.
that's for the post-budget meeting sock hop, which will happen at 9:30.
Anybody's here.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. And I will call the, yes, Councilor Moore, it's 5. It's 5 o'clock. And we'll call the, I will call the 2025 budget meeting to order for Wednesday, on Wednesday, October 30th of 2024. And to start the meeting, I'll have adoption of the agenda as presented. I don't think there's anything that we're going to add. Councilor Moore?
Certainly, I'll move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
I'll call the vote, all in favor? And I should note, there's 4 hands at the table and there's 2 hands virtually. Councillor Williams and Deputy Mayor Engel are off site and joining us virtually. So the process for that is I've asked, Jocelyn's looking after the screen with our 2 council members on it, and she'll just indicate if they're opposed to any motion, not if they're in favor every time. So with that, welcome to everyone. I'm surprised our regulars are not in the gallery, but I won't forget it was a long meeting, so welcome to all the residents watching via live stream, and welcome to everybody here. Those tonight, or in June of 2024, council approved the budget meeting timelines. And I know Ethan will have some of this information to bring up on the screen, so we're not duplicating information, but it was approved the format and timelines for the budget. And you can find that on the website under council meetings. You can find it in a weekly edition of the Albertan as to the proposed timelines that may or may not take up until December 3rd for approval of December 10th. Tonight, the administrative team will present the first look at 2025 proposed capital and operating budgets. And tonight's presentation will provide opportunities to ask questions and get clarification on items, if any is needed. Capital budget questions, comments will be entertained. And I guess we really need just to ask questions about them because our comments come in our votes when we approve or not the budget. But capital questions will be entertained following each business case. Operating questions will be entertained during the department presentations. But if the questions can be asked at the end of each department, that's encouraged. As always, raise your hand. All questions, and you'll be acknowledged in the order of hands. And I'll be looking to Jocelyn as well to indicate if there's any questions from our virtual members. Tonight, the process of asking through the chair will be relaxed so as to expedite questions and answers, because we know the questions will be going directly to the director or CEO who can answer them. Motions will be accepted if council members are inclined to make any at the time of the discussion, or if they can wait to the end of every section, then motions will be encouraged then. We can also have motions at the very end of the meeting, so as always, motions are welcome for show of support. Having said that, I turn the presentation of the budget, my not favorite time of the year. Although the budget is certainly one of our major roles as a council, and this year it seems that it appears, or it's intended that we have this approved by mid-December, the initial draft to carry forward in 2025. So having said that, I turn the presentation of the budget over to our CAO, Ethan Gordon.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for those opening comments. I'll just add a few brief remarks. Welcome, everyone, to Budget 2025. And first of all, I'd like to just acknowledge all the hard work that's gone into preparing for tonight from many throughout the organization, but especially our Chief Financial Officer and Director of Public Services, Evander Riley. And we are excited about what we have to present to you tonight. As you were aware, and as the mayor alluded to, this is one of the primary roles that you have as a council to approve a budget every year. And so we're excited to be able to start that process for this year. And as again noted by the mayor, this is the starting draft, the starting presentation, and what will follow in the subsequent meetings between now and December will be your opportunity to work with that, work on that, make decisions, ask for additional information, make motions, and which we'll go over in a bit more detail at the end of the meeting when we talk next steps. But just by way of process for tonight, Mayor, give a good overview of kind of questions. If you have questions, again, at the end of each kind of section, we'll have opportunities throughout to ask those questions. We don't anticipate really many motions tonight, because tonight's the initial presentation, and then obviously as the work unfolds with subsequent meetings, you'll have opportunities to make motions. But certainly if there is specifically something additional that you'd like brought forth from administration, and certainly those motions can be entertained throughout or at the end of the meeting. But again, tonight is a starting point, and along with the relaxed process that the mayor talked about, also on the administrative side, we will be relaxing that as well. Of going through the CAO, I'm happy tonight for again that relaxed environment during the presentation. And if you have a question of the administrative member presenting, feel free to just ask that directly. The mayor and I both agreed that we wanted a relaxed process tonight for ease and simplicity of presentation. All right, and then I'll speak in a bit more detail about the meetings to follow and the upcoming process that will follow after tonight. So with that, we'll do that at the end of the meeting. So we'll now turn the time over to Amanda Riley.
Thank you, Ethan, and good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome to the 2025 Capital and Operating Budget Presentation. Just to confirm, we are our guests joining us by Zoom. You can still see the presentation, is that correct?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so tonight we will be taking you through the budget presentation. And Ethan, our CAO, Ethan Gorner, has already provided a welcome and introductory remarks. We'll start with the budget survey results, and then followed by a presentation of the proposed capital business cases presented by each of our department's directors. And then we'll have a short break. And when we return, we'll jump back into the operating budget. And to close off the evening, we'll speak about the next steps in the budgeting process. So the budget survey is a tool that we use to engage the public in the budgeting process. We also published a Budget 101 document this year, which we presented at the Showcase Didsbury on September 19th. This tool is used to educate our taxpayers and residents about and engage them in the budget process. The 2025 budget survey ran from September 3rd through September 27th, and we received 86 responses with fairly equal representation from all age categories. 60% of the respondents are longtime residents of Didsbury, living here for over 10 years. And about 25% who responded lived here for less than 5 years. So there's a good showing of newcomers to Didsbury as well as those who have settled here for the long term. In asking how people are connected to Didsbury, and we asked them to check all that apply, 95% of people who responded live in Didsbury, 26% work in Didsbury, and 14% either own or operate a business. The survey questions focused on 3 significant service lines: the infrastructure maintenance, which includes roads, community services, which includes recreation and parks, and protective services. We looked at the importance of services and facilities versus the satisfaction level. And we found that the majority of all respondents find our services and facilities highly important. However, of the services listed, road maintenance had the lowest satisfaction rating at only 19%. The detailed survey results can be found on our website, and they're also provided to each of our council members as a package on the table. So when speaking to the tax strategies, we link it to the level of service. At budget time, council has the important decision. Do we increase the level of service, which may mean new amenities and programs and additional resources, and it's tied to a tax increase? Or do we decrease level of service, which may mean fewer resources and even closing facilities or slower response times, and may come with lower taxes? Or council could choose to maintain the level of service, which often would still come with an increase to tax to offset inflation. And so we asked, which of the following tax strategies do you support? And 43% voted or responded to maintain the current level of service, combined with the 19% who responded to enhance the level of service overall, noting that each of those options would or may require a tax increase. So we also looked at Didsbury's top financial priorities. And so we asked them to list these in order of priority, highest to lowest. So if it's on the left-hand side of the screen, it would be the higher priority. And if it's on the right-hand side of the screen, the lowest priority. So overall, we saw decreasing taxes was the top priority, with 45% of respondents choosing it as number 1, followed by saving for the long term with 40% and contributing to reserves at 35%. And then 71% found increasing taxes to be the lowest priority. And you may notice, if we consider this in response to the previous screen, the responses don't necessarily tie together. So previously, respondents said to maintain or enhance level of service, which may require a tax increase. But when we asked about the top priority, increasing taxes was the lowest priority. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. And then we also asked which services are most important to you, and they were to choose their top 3. So number 1 with the highest response was roads and infrastructure maintenance, followed by protective and emergency services, recreation, parks, and culture. And again, the survey tool is just one, or the survey is just one tool that we use to engage the public in the budget. And council may now consider these results and use them to make decisions for the budget. Under the MGA, council is required to adopt an operating budget for each calendar year and as well as a capital budget. So ideally, these are adopted by December 31st. But if they're not, then council may adopt a temporary budget, which ceases to exist once the final budget comes into place. So moving on, we're now section 3 of the presentation, which is the capital budget section. The capital budget is the town's annual plan for capital expenditures and the way that the town will pay for those assets. We break capital expenditures into 3 types. The first is new builds or asset purchases. And these are assets that have not been owned by the town in the past, and they may increase or improve the level of service. The second is capital maintenance, which are projects required to either to extend the useful life of an asset for future use. And third, the projects might be asset renewal, occurring when an asset meets the end of its useful life and is therefore replaced. And this is just maintaining the service level that already exists. On the screen, you can see the capital project overview for 2025, and which is just a listing of all the projects that we have to propose for you tonight. And then here's another view of the proposed capital budget, which includes the project title, the budget amount for each project, and the anticipated sources of funding. Overall, the capital budget totals $1,914,450. And it includes a variety of projects between the infrastructure department, community services, and corporate services. So at this time, I will be turning it over to Adam Johnston, the Acting Director of Engineering and Infrastructure, to present the business cases for that department. You can also find the detailed business cases in Appendix A in your package and follow along there. And at the end of each business case, we're going to pause and ask council if you have any questions regarding what you just heard. Just because each case is unique, you may have questions about each item. So now to turn it over to Adam.
So man, before, I just wanted to comment on the survey. And
Oh,
I
sure.
can certainly move there, if I don't have questions, I just want to comment, to my comment, well, this is not my favorite time of year, but because it's a difficult time, and it's hard to make everybody happy. So the decisions that council makes through the presentations that are here tonight are after thoughtful consideration, and I know council appreciates everybody that participated in the survey and will take those comments to heart and in thoughtful consideration. So it's important that our community did participate. Appreciate all the responses, and I guess most on their roads, but everybody else might take a look at it themselves and see what they need to see. But it does help make our for my questions, the direction we'll take and the votes I'll make based on what our community is after, and that's why it's a difficult time for any council member, I think, to make sure our community is happy with what their budgets deliver. So having said that, we will carry on with, unless anybody else wants any comments to that. Go ahead.
Okay, over to Adam.
And just a reminder to council to really speak in clearly in the rights. We've been reminded of that several times by some people sitting on my lap there. It's important that we do that.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me up here today. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to be speaking towards the 2025 capital business cases for engineering and infrastructure. The first one on the list is the roadworks program for 18th Ave and 7th Avenue. Now, 18th Ave is one of our main corridors in town. It connects obviously 23rd Street right down to Main Street, right down to downtown. And it is deteriorated substantially. The edges of the road have begun to fail. The base of the road, though, is in relatively good condition. Makes it a prime candidate for a relatively cheap rehabilitation, whether that be a mill and overlay, to do that. That is, if we do not do that at the next year here, maintenance costs have gone up. Maintenance costs will go up, as well as the type of maintenance that we do is generally not effective in those type of situation. We've lost chunks of road out of this road, so potholing and patching it, it's a Band-Aid throughout it. So for 7th Ave is a whole nother problem altogether. 7th Ave is originally a chip sealed road that we took over from the county that has failed absolutely completely. It's failed for the last 10 years up to this point, with more and more maintenance costs regarding it. We generally spend it's about 600 to 700 man hours on this road, just maintaining it to a level that is passable. This isn't maintaining it for the future. This is just filling the giant potholes that are going to sink your car. So we spend a substantial amount of time on this road just to maintain it for the traffic that utilizes it. Without the rehabilitation on this road, it's only getting worse. Every year we have more and more man hours. We're out there more and more times. This is just about a full crew that we utilize on this road, and it takes us well over a week just to even get past the 850-meter mark, just to pothole all the potholes. Where we've lost there's portions of the road that now that is all that's there is our pothole patching. The chip seal is completely gone. The base is in good condition. So it's once again a prime candidate for a rehabilitation like a mill and overlay. So the funding on this 2025 roadworks program, we're looking to go from the LGFF grant for a total anticipated cost of about $550,000. Does anybody have any questions on this topic?
Adam, I'm just wondering, the length of work you're gonna do on 7th Avenue, is it over a half mile?
It's just, so 850 meters is just about a half mile. And so, but obviously, price dependent. We don't know how far we can get. Obviously, with the funds that are available, we'll go as far as we absolutely can.
Okay, who wants to be the hand, so carry on.
So the next one to speak to is the stormwater pipe replacement for the intersection of 23rd Street and West Hill Drive. Now West Hill Drive is it's a main artery that connects the West Hill area right down to the rest of downtown. There is only about 2 that do that, and this is one of them. The driving experience on this road has gotten substantially poor. The road base is settled around the storm pipes, leaving substantial heaves in this road. Without interference from us, we're gonna have it's causing increased maintenance, whether that be pooling in the winter, freezing of the storm pipes because the water is actually not getting to the storm system. We have curbs that are failing because of this. Water is infiltrating into areas it shouldn't be, and it's just as well as we're pulling a substantial amount of gravel out of this system as well. So increased maintenance costs on this have gone up just to maintain what's existing. Without doing the roadworks as well, the storm lines connect all the leads in that area and fixing this heave, it is going to substantially get worse. It's only gotten worse in the last 2 or 3 years. It's gotten substantially bad. Without doing something about it right away, it's only going to get worse, and we'll be forced to do something later. So once again, this project is going to be funded by the LGFF grant for a cost of about $180,000 on this one. Does anybody have any questions?
So when this is done, the, lake that happens down at the bottom of 19th Avenue, that will be taken care of by this new.
Yes.
And that lump that we have to look at, That was a problem.
Absolutely it will. And so that's caused by the storm leads coming off that area. They've all failed. They're allowing water to come in. It's impacting the road base and settling the road base out. So that's what we're looking to repair. Absolutely. Next item to talk about is the street sweeper. It's been problematic to say the least over the last couple of years. Parts for this machine are very difficult to come by. Generally, they're all pulled out of California. When we're pulling parts out of California, we never get these parts in a timely manner. The last year in 2023, we had this machine down for about 50 days before we could get parts. And the only reason we were able to get this machine back up and running after the 50 days was because we had parts custom made, not because we can get them from the manufacturer anymore. We've had to bypass the manufacturer for a lot of these items that are failing and try to get these things custom made, which is timely and costly but it's the only way to kind of keep us up and sweeping. By replacing this machine, we're looking at increasing the level of service while decreasing the amount of time that we spend sweeping. So generally we can sweep the town in about 30 days. Just due to the nature of the machine and the age of the machine, it's not efficient anymore. They make way more efficient machines to do this type of work. So we believe we can get this work done in a portion of the time, freeing ourselves up to either increase the level of service of the sweeping of the roads or put the man hours towards something else. While the current state of the sweeper we have right now still has a small amount of residual value. It's not a lot, but it still is a small amount of residual value when it comes to street sweepers. It's still worth something right now if we decided to sell it. It would be an item that we could get rid of, at least get some sort of revenue back. The residents expect us to clean these roads yearly, at minimum once a year. There's a substantial amount of gravel, rock, debris that we put down throughout the year that they require us to sweep up to keep a safe roadway for the pedestrians and the traffic on the road. The replacement of this sweeper is to be an anticipated cost of about $500,000. That's to replace the unit as it sits. Funding would come from the O&M vehicle equipment replacement reserves. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Ben. Question I have is, are we gonna be able to obtain this piece of equipment nationally, or we still have to go stateside and face the opportunity of them having problems and not getting parts? Yeah, are they built in Canada or someplace close?
That's a great question. And yes, a lot of manufacturers have now started developing these things in Canada. Generally, the frame of the assembly is built in the States, as most auto manufacturers down there. They're imported to Canada and they're essentially assembled into a street sweeper. The manufacturers now have all the parts availability within an hour. There is manufacturers in Calgary and Red Deer that produce these things, and the part availability for the newer street sweepers is readily available.
So going forward, you don't see any issues with support for this particular unit, which is really bought here.
Correct. And so that was one of the main items that way we looked at sweepers and the cost of sweepers as a replacement, something that would get us a sweeper here, but not just get us a sweeper here, but get us a sweeper that we can have parts for in the future, easily, readily available, low cost to maintain. And so there is a substantial amount that fit that bid.
You find that there's an awful lot of maintenance for this type of equipment?
Generally, this type of machine, yes. It is a lot of common wear items. It's a machine that does a lot of different functions, and with a lot of different functions, unfortunately, comes a lot of maintenance costs. The maintenance costs on our street sweeper have been substantial, pretty well due to equipment breakdowns. It's not common wear items that we're replacing anymore. These are things that have started to fail due to the age of the sweeper. So that's what we're looking to try to get rid of.
So in purchase, have you allowed for the standard wearable replacement parts?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's more than enough. That's more than enough to keep us going for the next year. And generally with is also something we could also look at going in the future if we decide to go this route and purchase sweeper. They do have programs ran out of Calgary at manufacturers that essentially cover all these wear items that we can look into. So whether that be essentially some sort of warranty, would it be? And we can run 3, 4, 5-year part warranties based off of what we're looking to get for the money that we have available.
So the warranty would be 5 years.
It could be. It could be. It is up to us and what we kind of pick and choose.
Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I'm assuming every community has to have one of these things, so I'm wondering if there's been any exploration as to whether this could be shared with the neighboring community.
So generally the neighboring communities right next to us, actually just have gone through the process of purchasing sweepers. And so they have relatively new ones south of us, and they've got a relatively new one north of us. We found that over the past, when we've tried to acquire a sweeper for assistance, it is quite difficult. These are expensive pieces of machinery that are expensive to operate and expensive to maintain. A lot of municipalities don't like lending these things out.
I think the other question on that line is, that we had it with the grader, and how we funded that through a lease program annually to buy. Is that something possible with these pieces of equipment?
100% yes. Leasing is a possibility on a piece of machinery like this.
Like our grader?
It could be essentially built and structured just like the grader deal.
Okay. And the other part of that, I think, just in what I heard Councilman ask was if you could partner in the purchase of a piece of equipment, then you would be borrowing it. So if you partnered, has that been explored?
No, that route.
Already have it, they're not gonna just say, okay, buy into this now, but.
Generally, that's kind of the what we've found. Nobody really wants to partner because everybody pretty well needs that machine at the same time. It's been discussed. It's never been looked at thoroughly in this type of partnership, but it's been discussed. But when generally the town of Didsbury would need a street sweeper, so would everybody else, and so it makes sharing difficult.
I guess what we follow up with then is, if we could, and that would have to be more to the council to have that looked into, but it would cost to have a lease to purchase for, and I know it's reserves, and that's where we build reserves, but the other part of that is what's coming for our reserves and where are we gonna, is this a timely purchase with reserves? And if we could lease it through that reserve replacement program that we have used, I'd be interested in pursuing that, but I hope that'll be a motion if I consider doing that later. But thanks for answering my questions. Anything else?
Yes, because, the money for it will be coming out of the O&M vehicle and equipment replacement reserve. Do we have enough in there to be able to purchase it at this point?
I would ask Amanda on that question.
Thank you for the question. Yes, there is currently enough money in there to purchase it outright. If you look on, there's a slide coming up with all the funding scenarios and the totals, but let's see, please. On page 11 of your budget document, in the top right hand corner, there's a projected reserve balance for the O&M vehicle and equipment replacement reserve. So it's currently sitting at about $913,000 plus 2025's allocation, and so the balance projected for the end of 2025 would still sit around $600,000 after a purchase of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the street sweeper? So the next one I'm going to speak to is the GIS and asset management software. Now I may need to be corrected by Amanda here. I didn't have a long time to prepare this, but in 2024, council approved $60,000 for the GIS system. We didn't go through with that purchase just because on investigation of that, we realized that the GIS system needed to be integrated with an asset management software to function properly for us. Mapping is one thing, but an asset management software is what takes us to the next step with this. And we realize that GIS without the asset management just really isn't going to be the best bet for us. So the GIS system obviously lets us be able to map all our infrastructure right down to roads, sidewalks, water, wastewater system, public buildings. This helps us in planning maintenance activities, prioritizing repairs, executing lifespans of assets. Now, this could be anything from water mains to a roof on a building. It could be absolutely anything. By utilizing the GIS to visualize and analyze asset conditions, we can allocate resources effectively, reducing downtime and avoiding costly repairs. The GIS mapping provides detailed information crucial to making informed decisions about infrastructure projects. And this could be anywhere from new developments coming in. We can make quick, easy, fast decisions with all the information right in a single source. In a short sentence, the GIS system, combined with the asset management system, allows us to operate more effectively, efficiently and effectively, saving money and providing better service levels to the residents. So we suspect funding would be from the CCBF grant and the operating budget for this item. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Adam, you indicated that previously council had approved the $60,000 for GIS software. Does that mean that the total is the list $107,000?
I will jump in and take that question. So, no, the GIS project valuation is still estimated around the $60,000. So what we would do is actually just cancel basically and not spend what's in the budget for 2024. And we're just asking for it to be funded in 2025.
Say that again.
So the GIS component would still be $60,000 for. So in 2024, due to capacity reasons, we haven't gone ahead with the GIS project. It hasn't started yet. And so we would be looking at essentially doing the entire project starting from square one in 2025. But we don't need 60,000 twice, we just need 60,000 total for the GIS. So, and if you recall in 2024, the GIS was to be funded from reserves, like there's an offset in the budget. Just like it is in 2025, so since we're not spending the reserve money in 2024. And we don't have the cost, it's still a net zero. But the money's still in the reserve to do the GIS project. So we're just asking for that to be moved to 2025.
My understanding.
Yeah,
So if we approve the bid in the budget for 2024, it's already there. We don't need to rebudget it again here. It's already in there. It's like a carryover of a different project. It's the same thing as a carryover. So I don't understand why are we editing the 2024 budget so that the 60,000 is now out of that one and now it's going into this one? I'm not understanding how this is tying in.
Well, good question. Because of how it was brought in 2024, so we brought this just as part of the operating budget. And so it's not part of a capital budget anywhere, so it's not the same as a capital budget that might carry over the year end. It's part of the operating budget, which would cease to exist at December 31st, 2025. So we're just asking. And essentially, you're gonna have a budget variance of. The budget was 60,000 and we spent 0 in the operating budget for 2024. So now we're asking for that same amount in 2025. The $60,000 budget, and just to reaffirm the project in a sense.
Thank you, Reverend. So essentially, then we should see the $60,000 in the overall surplus for 2024.
No, you won't, because, so we were gonna transfer some reserves in to pay for the GIS in 2024. But we're not doing that transfer because we have no cost to offset it. So it's still a net 0 with no money spent.
Okay, there, thank you.
No problem.
Councilor,
Now, I know that, Amanda probably, that, there is no way that we know specifically what this is going to do for our municipality, but I'm pretty sure that where they're talking about advertising this, they talk about how much time and effort and efficiencies that are gained by using a tool like this. And so for the benefit of kind of like the cost benefit of doing GIS service, do we have any idea of what the savings might be in the different areas that maybe the advertising for this tool tells you, so that we should know what to expect? I'm sure it starts out smaller, and then as people will get used to using it, it becomes more and more helpful and efficient as time goes by.
Absolutely, I can kind of speak to that a little bit. And so this type of tool it's a hard one to measure like that. By essentially, we have all this information spread around in multiple different places. I've got maps of fire hydrants and maps of this and maps of that. This is looking to when we've got requests come in, whether that be for a new tie-in development, where all that information is there. It cuts out all that man hours and that time that we had to spend gathering all that information, pulling that information together and supplying that to the source where we need. So to try to speak to that, like, the savings, to try to nail down savings, it would be very tricky to do. It's mainly increasing our efficiency in the way that we do things, and by increasing our efficiency would decrease the time that we spend doing it.
I'll just add to that, that's just on operations side, not to mention the helpful resources to plan and all the operations that plan we utilize it for.
I might suggest that the case was made in 2020. For the 2024 budget, that we did approve to move ahead with this, so there's no trying to qualify it. From what my interpretation is, it's that it's in this budget now instead of last budget, and the reserves were untouched. So qualifying it and defending it were done last year in the budget, and we agreed to that. So the question I have is, okay, you go back to that operating budget, 60,000. That's still coming out of reserves. There's no impact on the operating budget because it's funded by reserves. So we won't see the operating budget presentation change by 60. That isn't funded from reserves. So it won't be tax funded, like revenue from tax, it'll be reserve funded.
Correct.
So I think. Yeah, that's what I was seeing too, is if it's coming from the operating budget, but it's coming from reserves first, so that's where funding is for that capital item. Because sometimes it does affect revenue from tax, and it's not in this case.
That's correct. The GIS component and everything you're speaking about from 2024 was related to the GIS component of this project. And then, but the new part of it would be the request for funding for the asset management software, which would be a two-phased approach. Year one, the software to get all your information in and mapped into the system. And then followed by year two, which would be the maintenance module implementation, which also has a price tag of about $85,000. But then going forward, there's annual costs that aren't that much, I'd have to get the exact amount of that.
And that was always the case that the asset module was next.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are working on the phase things, and I appreciate that they're being continued, so I think questions on the finances are answered. Do you have any questions over there? So then we can carry on to the next item.
Thank you very much.
I'm not as loud as Adam.
Not many are.
You didn't even need the microphone. Good evening. I'm excited to present the 2025 proposed capital budgets for the Community Services Department. So the first one that is up is the complex additional parking lot. So if council remembers, additional parking has been planned on the Memorial Complex site since the inception of the outline plan back in 2016. It currently sits on the multi-year capital as a planned project in 2026. However, it's being brought forward ahead by a year due to the east reservoir that's going to be built on the property in 2025. So with that project, we are expecting to lose between 35 to 40 parking spots on the west end of the parking lot, the main parking lot of the complex. And if any of you have ever been at the complex when it's busy for a tournament or a big event or anything, we already have a parking deficit there. That was why this additional parking had always been planned for. And now with the reservoir being constructed, we don't want to be at a further deficit. So as such, we're presenting this evening the additional parking on the northeast portion of the Memorial Complex lands. So you can just see the screenshot up there in the photo of it. I'd also like to note the nice trees and forest that's been donated through Trees Canada. So sitting in behind that is where this parking lot is being proposed for. We anticipate that with nice roomy parking spots that we can accommodate about 50 vehicles on that parking lot. If we put it in a little tighter and go with an angle parking lot model, we could increase that upwards of probably about 20 more stalls. So this project, and then we would have a linkage. So in the trees that have been planted, there is a planned linkage to the pathway. Oh. Okay. Like right here is where it is. There's a natural spot there. So as part of the project, we would be paving that piece of pathway as well, so that we can provide safe access to the resident, or not the resident, the patrons of the complex, to link to our existing pathway that we put in last year, so then they can shoot in straight on the sidewalk up to the front of the building. So that's the plan for this project.
Can you show where that is again?
Oh, sorry. Okay. Is this one? No. Okay. So the parking lot would sit like here, if you can see. And then there is a, like right in there, pathway has there's been a spot where nothing's been planted in anticipation of a link to the pathway to whatever was going to exist on that side of the facility. So does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
and I asked you another question when we were there that day. Why the pathway could be closer to the building. But
So, oh goodness, there's a lot of things going on here.
I agree with what you're doing.
Okay, so this here, if you see this piece of roadway here, that is a delivery spot for our chlorine delivery for the aquatic center. And that's the only space that we can accept chlorine deliveries. It goes right into our chlorine room there. And so we have to maintain that little bit of roadway there. And then here, like it's just, I think, thinking about
you know, a lot of our patrons are children, that to put a pathway right where big trucks are going to be is not the best location. And so I think that coming down a little bit further, which really will tie in nicely to the parking lot area, makes better sense for the traffic and to ensure the safety of the users there. So this project is planned for $80,000 is the budget for it. And it is planned to be funded through the cash in lieu of Municipal Reserve Fund. Do you have any additional questions for this?
Quiet screen, you have over there, Dawson. No, thanks for that.
Okay.
You haven't seen hands.
Awesome. Oh,
What do you do now?
Oh.
I just looked at you and then looked away and your hands up.
We answered from Councilor Williams.
Thank you. I'm really happy to see a additional parking lot, and it's much needed, especially since we'll be losing a lot of parking. I have a question in regards to 22nd Ave now, since we're gonna probably see a lot more traffic onto that road. Is there a plan to put that onto a multi-year capital plan for a possible mill and overlay in a handful of years?
Is that, I don't know that that matters right now. I think that comes with the multi-year capital plan.
I think we would need to see the parking lot in place and evaluate it. I do know that with the 5-0 Club there, that it is often quite congested when they're having their activities. And this parking lot would be usable by those users as well. So we actually might see a reduction in terms of street parking that's happening along 22nd. But in terms of road maintenance on that road, I think that would likely come in future years once we can evaluate if that actually will become a problem.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you. Just a suggestion, I would opt for maximizing parking spaces. As you said, annual parking or parking spaces, and then make it 135 to 40 or 50.
Yes, I asked Adam if it was Costco parking stalls or regular parking stalls. And what the 50 would be like Costco size parking stalls, whereas if we were to go with the angle model, we could definitely get more in there.
Yeah, just space so that when I open my door, I don't get your car, you know, kind of thing.
What are you driving? So I know not to park next to you. Oh, okay.
But just, and you know, I mean, most people are driving SUVs or small
Yeah.
cars nowadays. But, and I don't know how you would divide your parking spaces, but it's like downtown, that works.
Mhm. Yeah, it would be something similar with I think a one way in, one way out type of a traffic situation. Yeah.
And I don't know if that's governance or if that's something that you come back to council for approval, or administration would just make their plans and.
Yeah, I think that, you know, once the project was approved, what we would do is we'd really kind of look at the planning of it and then probably just let council know kind of what it is, what I'm, you know, and I think for us, we already didn't have enough. Why would we not do the most that we can? So.
All right, any other questions on the parking lot? Okay, there you
All right. Cool. Okay. So the next project that we're presenting is the Didsbury tree project that actually already has council approval. This was approved on August the 27th when we were putting in our application to the Growing Canada's Community Canopies. That's a mouthful. The GCCC grant through FCM program. So this project, if we're successful, would see us planting approximately 100 mature trees within the community. The majority of them would be along Highway 582 in the Rosebud Valley Campground to replace trees that were removed many, many years ago as part of another construction project. But additionally, we would be looking at removing and replacing many of our heritage trees. They're green ash trees that are consistently coming down in windstorms right now. We have removed, how many this year, Adam? 4 or 5 of them, and they're just past the point of, we go in and we'll do a street and prune them all. We kind of do one of those streets every year, but we're at the point now where that's just not enough. They've lived their good life. So we would be looking at replacing those trees with more appropriate species that don't have that same type of shorter lifespan as a green ash tree does. And so in terms of the funding, we, if successful, we would see $117,000 coming from the grant. And then council has committed an additional $102,700. And that also would be coming from cash in lieu of municipal reserve fund. Just to update you on where we're at in terms of the process, this has been quite a intensive application for a grant. And so we have made it past the initial stages. We have made it, I believe, into 2 rounds of peer review. And each time we're being asked can you just make a tweak here? Can you just make a tweak there? So we're feeling quite hopeful that we will be successful on this grant. However, if we aren't, the project won't go forward. If we are, then we'll be bringing a lot of new trees to the community. Any questions on this one?
We asked them all.
Yeah.
Okay, through the application, but thank you for that.
Yep.
Let's see, do you have a question, Councilor Roger?
Just out of curiosity, would a person want to put pine trees in instead of
Deciduous?
And the whole idea was maintenance, you're gonna pick up leaves and all that kind of stuff. Does that help you did that?
I think that when, if a resident is interested in planting a tree, they should give us a call, because we do have a lot of professionals that we are able to kind of consult with in terms of what the most appropriate species would be. I don't have the list of them with me here, but it is a variety of trees that are native to our area, which is really important for a tree's ability to be successful. That is going to be a lower maintenance, which is important to us in terms of our ongoing maintenance costs. That's going to be beautiful and, will grow in a relatively quick time. We're not this grant isn't planning for baby trees. We're bringing in something substantial. Of course, it's not going to be what those trees there are really old and they're really big and beautiful. However, our fear is that one bad windstorm or a heavy snow too late in the season can cause a lot of damage to property, to vehicles, and also the risk of pedestrians as well. So we want to make sure that the proper species is going to be planted, and we've had to consult with arborists throughout the entire process. They actually are kind of a part of the project with us, so.
It would help with some of
Oh, for the campground, definitely. It's gonna provide a lot of privacy to those campers that want to enjoy that space. It's gonna beautify the area because it is also considered a public park space in the community, and definitely it's gonna be noise reduction, so, yeah.
Thank you very much. Nicole, I'm just wondering where in Didsbury you're expecting us to be able to take that picture of it.
Well, that's gonna be at the Rosebud Campground. This is our vision for 2021-07. Yeah. That's not our campground. All right. Okay, so the next project that I'm presenting is the Memorial Complex LED lighting retrofit. I'm excited to let council know that we have received a grant approval from the MCCAC, which is the Municipal Climate Change Action Center. That's a grant that is kind of hosted through Alberta Munis. And so we have been notified that we are eligible for this project. The total project cost is $40,000. $20,000 of that would be coming from the grant. And then we'd be requesting council to consider an additional $20,000 to come from the Didsbury Memorial Complex Reserve. And this project will see a full retrofit of all of our lights above both of our ice surfaces in the arena, above our curling rink surface, as well as some additional lighting, I think in the upper lounge area of the curling rink as well. So a really substantial improvement for the facility. It will be amazing for those people that are enjoying it for hockey or in our off season. And we're going to see, so part of our eligibility for the grant was that it had to have a payback of a certain amount of years. And so with this project, we will anticipate a full payback in 8 years. As you're aware, the complex is a large energy consumer. And so anything that we can do to help reduce those costs to our taxpayers is what we're going to try and do. So, so this is exciting. And do you have any questions?
Who's happy with the climate action day?
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one. So this one was not as part of your multi-year capital plan. This is kind of a new one. So as part of our repair and maintenance of the memorial complex, the title of this is the complex eaves trough repairs. So part of our annual R&M is we take care of little things, like sometimes the eaves troughing blows off in the wind and we get it put back on. Well, it's at the point where we just can't, it doesn't necessarily want to go back on. So there are a few sections along the curling rink. This one that you see here, that's on the backside of the aquatic center, as well as one piece of eaves troughing that's on the front entry of the facility at the corner of the arena that needs to actually be moved to be ahead of the catch basin that was put in place when that road work happened a couple of years ago in front of the complex. So the value of this kind of just pushed it into a capital business case. And so of course, we want to protect the facilities and make them last as long as they can. So things like this are ways that we can do so. The eaves troughing on both of those facilities is original to the building. So they're about 30 years old, and it's probably time that they got some attention. We did last week, we were able through our R&M budget to have the stucco repaired. So that photo that you're seeing there, that's been fixed since we took this picture. So in preparation of being able to go ahead with these repairs in 2025. I think that's all that I had for this. So this is a $30,000 project, and this would be funded through the Didsbury Memorial Complex Reserve. Do you have any questions?
I don't see any hands.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my last item is another playground. So in 2024, we successfully replaced the Southridge playground. We have 8 playgrounds in Didsbury, and this will be the 5th of those to be replaced, and we're proposing that it be the West Hill playground. Similar to all of the other playgrounds, they were all constructed about the same time using the same materials that are not recommended to be used in our time now. So we're just picking away at them, trying to do one every year or two. as we can. Obviously, you know, as they continue to age in place, if they're not improved, then they'll just have to be removed without anything being put back in their place if they become an unsafe situation. So this West Hill playground replacement is valued at $75,000, and this is being proposed to be funded through the O&M Vehicle and Equipment Reserve. And I think that's all that I had to present on this. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Councilor Moore?
I guess just, it needs to be done for sure, and I helped build it a long time ago. And I'm just wondering, though, the source of funding, I'm just wondering, is there a parks reserve that would normally be used for this? I see it being vehicle and equipment, since the normal use for vehicle and equipment reserves pay for the grants.
Thank you for the question. Yes, this is the reserve we've been using for the last few years. We have renamed it recently with the reserve policy that went into place in 2024. However, when you think of equipment, don't just think of like the rolling stock type of equipment. It's any type of equipment. So anything related to operating. But this is one we've been using for playground.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I just have one, it's related to playgrounds, but not to this topic. And I'm just wondering about our adult activity playground that used to be. Is that on our, is that in our plan here? That wasn't identified, I know, in the survey as being a priority.
Yeah, so our plan is, and it's just been a staffing thing, like, our plan is that, so it's the outdoor exercise fitness equipment that used to be on the Jets, where the Jets playground is now. We still have all of those pieces, they're safely stored over at Public Works. And I think that when we look at kind of reinstating them back into the community, it will be likely along the walking path at Memorial Park. I think that's the best kind of location for it, just even if it's just kind of around the upper loop is probably where I'd place them. I think there's four pieces, 4 or 5 of them. And so we would just space them out and you know, or the other option is to, I guess, build a small park for them as well. They just require a concrete base to go in. It's just been a matter of other priorities that have kind of taken us away from our ability to do that, but not a big investment and likely something that we can just do through an R&M budget is to just get those reinstalled, so.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Clay. Just speaking about playgrounds, it's just on my mind, but adult playground, fitness equipment or whatever, but I would consider it playground, I guess, because that's, and that is a good idea, but thanks for answering.
You bet.
Any other questions from anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to wrap up the capital budget section with a few projects. So the first one that I'm presenting is the thermal imaging camera replacement, which is part of the Didsbury Fire Department's multi-year small capital equipment plan. That is in place as part of our fire services agreement with Mountain View County. A thermal imaging camera is a portable viewer used by our firefighters to navigate through smoke or dark environments. The device renders infrared radiation as visible light to allow the firefighters to monitor the fire spread, to be able to visualize a plan and attack and locate hotspots and ensure our firefighters' safety while fighting fires. Each fire vehicle is equipped with a thermal imaging camera. The camera being replaced is over 10 years old. And as the device has aged, the batteries have become obsolete, rendering the device useless upon failure. and hence why it's here for replacement tonight. The typical lifespan of the device is about 10 years with a projected cost of $18,000 to be funded from the operating budget and which would be split with the county 50-50. Are there any questions?
I'm always interested if this is already in the operating budget.
That, yeah, it is in the operating
I
budget.
probably read that. So the
18.
already there.
Yeah, so you'll see the whole entire 18,000 in the budget. There's an offsetting
Yeah.
revenue line.
Thank you.
Any further?
All right. So,
Okay, so the next project that I'm presenting tonight is a server and network upgrade project. So currently the network is laid out in a flat structure, and segregating the network will provide extra layers of security and increase the network efficiency across all of the town of Didsbury sites. Included in the project would be the replacement of 2 switches, and switches are required to connect devices to the network, and also deploying new secured and public Wi-Fi networks. The server upgrade portion of the project is focusing on getting the operating systems on our servers upgraded to the latest supported version. A current version of software is important to continue, so this software can continue receiving security updates. Currently, 4 production servers require software updates, while the host server, the physical server, which was upgraded in 2024, like the physical server was. However, the operating system on the server was not, and that requires an upgrade. So the project requires system-wide outages. So most of the work would be done during non-business hours over the weekend. The total cost of the project is $31,050. And it's currently funded in the operating budget as well. Are there any questions?
I didn't see that on the MICP, but I might be missing it.
It's not,
Okay.
no. So this is something new that our new IT contractor has brought forward for a couple of reasons. The number one is security. So with our, what we found is that our servers are not, they don't have the most current version of the software. And in fact, they have software that's obsolete and you can't update it anymore. So that cost is on there. Plus the work, like the man hours required to do the work to upgrade the systems as well, and to create a network that will all speak to each other. Right now, we're kind of segregated where the Memorial Complex and the Public Works and Fire Hall, which are kind of one location as it come for IT purposes. They speak to the town office, but they don't speak to each other. So if it's also providing kind of repetition in the system to be able to, if there's an outage one place, you could still get connection a different way. And also to create a private and a public Wi-Fi network in our locations. So that is secure. So if you're on the public Wi-Fi, you're not going to be able to access anything that's in the town system as well. So that's another security feature.
And so on the multi-year capital plan, it goes under the information technology area. That's where we update to.
Yeah, correct. Well, so when we bring the multi-year, so the multi-year plan in the binder is the one that was approved a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
We will be bringing a new 25 or 2026 to 2030 capital plan early in the new year is our hope So you won't see an amendment for a project that's approved for 2025. If this doesn't go forward in 25, then yes, we'd put it on a new multi-year capital plan.
Thank you very much. Amanda, you talked about public Wi-Fi, and can you tell me, qualify what I'm asking this, but can you tell me what the range of that Wi-Fi is going to be? The reason I'm asking is because this is one of the many failures that ONET had. Why it's failing ONET, so I just want to know.
Oh. It wouldn't be like it wouldn't be like a public Wi-Fi. It would be you'd have to be in one of our buildings to access it.
Any other questions? I don't see any.
Okay. And so the last project that I'm putting forward today is the replacement of one of our municipal enforcement vehicles, specifically our 2014 Dodge Ram vehicle. Sorry. So this was purchased over 10 years ago, and we're seeing quite a bit of repair and maintenance activities that's required just to maintain it. It's used by our community peace officers to carry out their duties such as, sorry, my notes, I cannot get to them. Soft technology, right? Okay, so it's used by the community peace officers to carry out their duties, including patrolling the community, conducting investigations, and providing assistance and responding to emergencies. There's been a change to the services provided, given that we don't do the Mountain View County animal contract anymore. So the new vehicle should be seeing fewer kilometers each year, just because we don't go into the county as often. But we still need a good vehicle that has stability on icy roads in the winter. And so, like I said, the frequency of repairs has increased quite a bit in the past couple of years. And we're still determining exactly what type of vehicle we're going to replace it with, but it will still need to be outfitted with the decaling, the proper decaling that's required by the municipal enforcement program at the province, and as well as lights and the technology inside the vehicle. So we're estimating approximately $80,000 for this replacement, and it would be funded by the Municipal Enforcement Reserve. Are there any questions?
Don't see any of that, but can we just go over one questions then? On
Yep.
capital?
Sure.
Does anybody have any overall questions on the capital budget? Yeah. We'll go ahead. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Aaron. Amanda, it seems to me that we did a design and phase on the Valorosa pathway in 2024 capital budget. Why are we not seeing that there for the next phase here in this budget?
At this time, administration feels that project, although it could come forward, we feel that there's a couple of things happening. So number one, Valorosa is being developed where they're providing access out of the community through ways of roads and sidewalks, which will be built. And then secondly, that project, we were hoping to see a grant, some sort of pedestrian connectivity grant for capital, like the capital component of pathway type grants come up, and we didn't see that this year. And we think that'd be a really good project to have if and when those type of grants become available, to be able to fund like the Valorosa connectivity pathway. Or what is it called? Valarosa Connection Link. Yes. So we didn't bring it forward for your consideration, but if council still wants to see that, then we could look into that.
With the design phase.
The design phase is still, is it completed?
We designed it, yeah.
It is designed, yes.
No, I had that up too, to ask that question, because I think the Valorosa residents were quite excited about that, to see that pathway link get in there. I would like to see it come back. Because it's a whole different area of Valorosa that it's getting people out of Valorosa with. And only because we did phase one, and so now phase two, and maybe we can see the design at some point. So remember, we're still with that. Do you have, anybody else have questions? Cause I'm just looking at, and I asked this last year, and I really appreciate the cover page that talked, I'm just gonna get to it here. Because you have the new, and you had a little symbol on it.
Mhm.
I appreciate that it did identify the new. And it's easy to know what isn't in our capital, and it's easy for the most part to understand why, because it all takes money, and looking at our LGFF and our CCVF and all that money in reserves. It's nice to keep them building and identify, but I'm interested in the connector to the East Didsbury Reservoir, because I believe it's gonna be a design, well, it's gonna be the whole project. I'm not the engineer, but we're talking about it, so should it not be in the capital budget?
Are you referring to the transmission line?
Transmission lines or reservoir, new reservoir.
Mhm. We anticipate that would be coming forward as an amendment. At the time of preparing for the budget presentation, the information wasn't available. But that's definitely something that's on administration's radar as a project that needs to come forward.
Great.
Yeah.
And we don't think alike, I know, we just have to answer to make sure that we do.
No problem.
And on here, the 21st Avenue extension, water, wastewater and service works design and tender package, is that, are there some on here that should be prioritized that maybe, I think they should, but they really can wait? And is that one of them?
So that project is another one that at the time when preparing for this presentation, we didn't have all the answers, and so now we need to go back and figure out exactly what that project looks like. On the multi-year capital plan, just the design phase was coming up for 2025. And we understand through conversations with ISL that it can be designed at any time in 2025. So administration needs to spend a little bit more time figuring out what that project looks like, because it is important for the new reservoir to have that completed. There are optional components to it that we're still trying to figure out what exactly the project looks like, and that's why it's not here today. And we're anticipating that though in the coming months that it would be something that we bring back to you, or at least sometime early in 2025, just knowing that the design phase could happen at any time when the ground's not frozen, because they'll have to dig holes, test holes, but that one would be kind of coming forward as well.
Thank you. And then these Didsbury Reservoir, when the updated budget comes back, or the updated NYCP comes back, that will be on here. I know it was on here.
For which one?
The East Didsbury Reservoir, just the whole project. Should it not be on our multi-year capital plan? I might be differently.
Yeah, I suppose it could be. Like the East Reservoir that's going on the by the complex, yeah. So, yeah, I think that was kind of an oversight because the project was approved, but definitely the years, because there's different amounts, kind of the cash flow could be integrated into the multi-year.
Yeah, I
Capital plan.
understand that too, that we talked about it endlessly but when the updated multi-year capital plan comes back, it will be part of that, so it's always captured. And I look at people, back on things in our budgets and on our website that all those things are captured and I appreciate that, so I always wonder if I'm taking the right way, and then we do. But thank you, man, for taking the same way too.
No problem.
Not you have to, by any means. And that's all the questions I have, because when the updated capital plan comes back in 2025, we'll have all these projects captured somewhere else. And right now, we're dealing with the money we have and the priorities we have, and these are great projects. Thank you for the presentation on that.
You're welcome.
Council Moore?
Yes, Amanda, just wondering, I haven't seen the halfway plan that is the one for Almosa, but this is a new thing that just came up. I'm just wondering if it will be amended to show the new connection that the subdivision down there is making for the connection to the pathways around the stormwater ponds. They've taken 10 lots and made them into 9 and taken a sliver that they're going to connect to the pathways there to be able to give access for Valdosta residents. And I don't think that's something that was anticipated. It just came up at our last municipal planning commission. So I'm wondering if there will be an amendment to that plan to show that new connection that wasn't there before, or if it could be just an addition to it in some way to show that that's going to happen.
And is the plan you're referring to the pedestrian connectivity plan?
No, it is, it's something that wasn't anticipated because it just came up at the last municipal planning commission, where they had taken a sliver off the side, the back of the lots that were going toward the river to make the connection that would be a new one for Valdosta to be able to access the pathways.
But to clarify, you said, could we update the plan to show that? Which plan?
Well, I heard others talking about this plan for the Valdosta connectivity that apparently involves some other things. This is a new thing that wasn't anticipated when we made that plan.
Oh, okay. So the Councillor Windsor was referring to the Valorosa Link project, which would come out of Valorosa Park, which has the multi-unit housing in it, if you've been down to Valorosa lately, and it goes up and connects to kind of behind the ball diamonds. So that would be kind of the design phase of that is happening in 2024. And on our multi-year capital plan, the construction phase was to be in 2025. And so I believe those two things at this time won't be connected. You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Hunter. I'm thinking back to the survey and what I think I can echo what your Hunter said, and that there's roads, roads, roads. And I see essentially within the community that be recognized within the community, I see 2 road projects. Is that responding appropriately to the survey? Would be my question. And I know you can't answer. I guess that's a question.
Council.
Okay.
But this is the time to, I guess, discuss council's interest and the man has answered some of there are 2 more coming. based on, not two more roads coming, but the one road project. Not in road projects.
Well, the 21st Avenue extension would does have an option to, if you think about where that is, it's runs alongside Heritage Crossing and then goes at that T intersection. And so it does have an option to redo the surface works rather than just do a directional drill. So that is something that that would see another road improvement as well as the sidewalk in that area. And I think the roadworks program that's been brought forward this year are addressing some roads that have many issues
Be our biggest concerns.
at this time. And then as we go further with connecting the East Reservoir, anytime we'll do, like, we have to bring the line down 16th. So that would, at that time, we should do 16th rather than doing it right now before we're ready to do the underground. So those are the type of things that we're thinking of when bringing those projects forward, and hopefully over time, we can kind of address all of the roads that need to be done.
I also add, I really would like to see, I'll make, if somebody will make the motion to bring back the Valorosa project, and I think we'd like to see the design too. Just into the capital budget for consideration. I think the Valorosa residents, I think that was loud and clear too, like in last year's survey, that there is a way out of there, and we did invest the 30,000 in the design. So if it comes back, that there is a pathway out of there, and I understand the grant process. And maybe more information could come back on the grants or what potential grants there might be. And then the other part of that is I don't want the community to get depressed and sad that 23rd Street North is not on this list. Because I think that needs to get put on here somehow, somewhere, and I would request that the administration review that and just find out when and how we could get this on here based on administrative.
And more information
right now. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. More information about that project as well as forthcoming, and administration is just looking into a couple different ways to do that project before it's ready to come forward as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we understand that, but our community and residents don't see that here, and that's. And Adam tweaked that question, because he said those are our two priorities, but we know 23rd Street North is also a priority, and just even to have it on there to acknowledge that we are hearing that message loud and clear. How we do that, I will leave that to administration, but I will send a message that yes, 23rd Street North is on our minds too. So
It is.
This not being ignored.
Yes.
So do you want to does anybody want to make the motion on the Valorosa pathway to bring back the design and put it in the as a proposed 2025 capital item with information on potential grants? Because maybe there aren't any in the future, maybe there are. I wouldn't know.
At this point, well, sorry, you're asking for somebody to make the motion, but with regards to the grants, there's nothing that we know of right now. Usually when they come out, they have a short turnaround, and we're kind of on the lookout because they'll look for things that have a shovel-ready project. So having the design would make the project shovel-ready and a good candidate for that type of grant. And so it's really my preference to wait for a capital grant like that to be able to fund it, especially with kind of the pressures that we're seeing on all of the other grants, LGFF and CCBF, and knowing about these other large projects that are coming forward. Something like the Valorosa Link, I would really want to see a pedestrian or green transportation type of grant to cover something like that. Would be my recommendation.
I just hope that isn't 5 years away or 4. Because I really think it's an important project and we did identify last year as its importance. Councilor Moore?
Would it be appropriate to make a motion, to have that, Valrosa Lake design come to council? Information.
We can make whatever motion we like.
No, I don't
If you would
know.
like to make it.
So I don't know if it's
They
ready.
can see that, can't they?
Well, I think Adam said it was.
Yeah.
This, would it be something that would be useful for council the way it's written, or is it engineering? It's a regular report, right?
Yeah, it's visual.
It's a design.
It's a design, so I've got drawings of multiple different types of pathways and different areas where we wanted to go in there. So we can easily send this to you guys.
Okay, then I would make a motion that the Valrosa link designs plans come to council for information.
Yeah, I appreciate that motion. I just don't want us to get lost that it could be a 4-year down the road capital item and I know our money's tight, but Valrosa's got to have their fingers crossed for this for a long time from what we've been hearing. So I certainly support that the design comes back. And we also have another meeting November 12th and 19th, so maybe we'll have some more information by then. So anything else to add to that motion or questions?
Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hunter. I think I'd like to add it to the capital, just as a proposal. I'd like to see what the cost is. I'd like to see what's involved. And yes, maybe we'll delay it until there is a grant available, but at the same time, I think it's important that the community knows that we're at least thinking about it.
It's captured.
And it's captured, yeah.
Because we know we can always defer things like we are doing right tonight.
Yes.
With what we just heard, we're deferring many projects. But if it's there. And we did approve last year, phase 1, because phase 2 was gonna activate this year. And only for those reasons and to capture it on our MYCP. And I don't, that it would either be an amendment to the motion or you'd have to make a new motion. So Councillor Moore would have to accept that amendment to just have it placed on the volunteer capital plan.
Another motion.
Okay, so. Yeah, she has to speak into the mic here, right?
Sorry, yes, I would like the motion to go as stated. Which is to have the Valrosa design, the link design come to council for information and recommendation. And if there's another motion that could be made separately.
Okay, and could we ask that it comes during our capital budget discussions? Like not in January? Or would we anticipate it would come in the fall, November?
Is it ready to go?
The design?
I understood it was ready to come to us now, so
Yeah, so I.
whenever it can come.
Timely in a timely manner, let's say. And that's not my motion, but I'm just requesting that. But there's a motion on the table. I'll call the vote, all in favor. It's carried. And you want to make another one to add it to the 2025 plan for consideration?
Yeah, exactly that. Mayor Hunter has added the Valrosa link, phase 2 to the 2025 proposed capital budget. For consideration.
Okay, any questions on that? I'll call the vote, all in favor? Opposed? So is that carried, Jocelyn? We had 2 votes for in favor, so that's carried. I'm just anticipating you're gonna tell me if they're opposed. Okay, so I think that does wrap up the capital budget unless there are any other questions or comments on the budget. Okay, so I think there's is this where we break?
Yes, this is where we take a break.
So 10 minutes, which is 50 some people, but we're gonna be firm on 10.
Okay.
Which that's the goal. Yeah, I don't think they wanna watch it.
We can just, we'll just mute it. Mute it.
So we're in break right now, just sort of, there's muffins.
Mine is still running.
Well, I'm ready whenever it's
Okay, amendment,
Yeah.
so let's, start with the operating budget then.
Perfect. Okay. Now you have to listen to me talk for 2 hours. Welcome back. We're gonna dive into the operating budget. So then an operating budget represents the estimated day-to-day costs associated with the delivery of town programs and services and the operation of our facilities. It outlines the revenues and expenditures of the town for the coming year. I will present the budget for the town overall, taking a look at the budget year-over-year comparison for each object code. An object code is the type of revenue or expense. Later on, we will look at the utility department specifically, due to the fact that they are self-supported departments that do not require taxation to offset their costs. Another way to look at the operating budget is by costing center. A costing center is where the specific level, service level, or departmental costs are housed, which is important to the budget, however, difficult to communicate the overall changes of the town when speaking at a costing center level. The costing center budgets and department descriptions and variances have been prepared, however, and you can find them in Appendix C and D in the budget document. So up on the screen, you will see the proposed 2025 operating budget. And we have the revenues and expenditures. And then they net down to what's called to calculate the municipal tax levy required, or what we also refer to as revenues from taxes. So as you can see, it's the total of the revenues less the expenditures equals the amount required from taxes. The proposed operating expenditures for 2025 is $13,818,837, an increase of 5%. The proposed revenues, before not including the revenues from taxes, is $8,223,337, an increase of 3.8%. This results in total revenues from taxes of $5,595,500, which is an increase of $355,638 or 6.8%. It's important to note, however, although the resulting revenues from taxes are expected to increase by 6.8%, that does not result in a tax increase of 6.8%. Changes to taxes and the tax rates that result from it, are the result of several factors. One being the revenue from taxes required in the budget, but also another variable is the town's assessment. Sorry, let me hide this. There. Okay, so as you can see, it's a little closer for you to view. The municipal tax levy required. And what we're showing here is that for every 1% increase to revenues from taxes, it's about $52,000. So that is typically a figure that council pays attention to. So for each $52,000, it's about 1% of an increase to revenues from taxes. Well, this would be in the operating budget section, page 19. The slides are a little bit different. So you do have the slides in the stapled package as well, which have very small numbers on them. So sorry about that. Okay. So in this view, you can see the 5-year look at revenues from taxes. And we can see it has increased year over year. And like I said, the increase to revenues from taxes does not equate to the same change in tax rates or taxes paid by individuals. This is because the tax rate is calculated based on multiple variables. One is the revenue from taxes and the other being assessment values. When we have new assessment, or what is known as assessment growth, that will take a share of the additional revenue from taxes. And for it's very early, but we're projecting about $100,000 of assessment growth revenue. And we are proposing that those additional funds be offset with a new transfer to reserves being contributed to the roads and sidewalks reserve specifically to offset future reductions in capital grants and to manage our infrastructure into the future. So that is a part of the budget that's being proposed tonight. Again, we are very early in the process. Assessment typically is finalized early in 2025, sometime before February 28th. But we are projecting a residential assessment increase of between 8 and 10%, and this is just for market changes, and a non-residential increase of between 5 and 7%. And then anything that's attributable to development or new assessment, those are outside of those increase figures. So overall, we're projecting an increase of 66.5 million of assessment. And as you can see, about 12 million of that is assessment growth. 54.5 million is changes to market values. We've also done an estimate on what tax rates might be with the proposed budget. So we're looking at, and again, based on the estimated assessment, which will change. We're looking at residential rates reducing from 7.156 to 6.988, and non-residential rates reducing from 8.811 to 8.537. And that's taking into account the same tax split that we did in 2024. We've also done a preliminary impact on individual assessment. So the estimated tax impact for each residential property that we have a cross section of is between $2 and $7 a month with the budget, how it's proposed now. As you can see, these values on those residential properties are estimated, as they all have the same increase of about 8%. But it gives you kind of a picture of what could occur based on the current budget. And for non-residential assessment properties, there's a cross-section of properties as well. And those range between $2 and $51 a month increase, so depending on the value of the property. So at this time, I'm going to present an overview of the remaining revenues that's in the budget. And then when I'm done presenting the revenues, I'll give you a chance to ask any questions, and then we'll move on to expenses. The revenues for the town are largely restricted to user charges, franchise fees, operating grants. We will go through them one by one and talk about the significant budget variances year over year. Oops. Overall, you will see that we have budgeted less conservatively when it comes to revenue expectations. And as I go through, I might not touch on specific areas if the change isn't significant. But feel free, if you have questions on any area, then I can take them at the end of this section. So first, we'll speak to the government operating grants. We receive operating grants from all levels of government, including the federal, provincial, and our partners at Mountain View County. We are projecting a pretty similar amount of funding across each of the levels of government. With the provincial government, we did have the ACP Municipal Internship Grant in 24 and 2023. We were part of an 18-month program, which we received funding for. Now that program has ceased and we've come to the end of our project, there's no grant expected for 2025. There will be no grant. We did not apply for another internship for 2025. And then with Mountain View County provides shared services funding for recreation and culture facilities, which increases annually for an amount equivalent to the consumer price index. Right now in the budget, we're projecting an increase of 1.5%. Inflation has slowed in the recent months. And so depending on what the CPI is by the end of the year, that number may be different. So overall, though, the variance, we're seeing just a decrease of just under $14,000 in operating grants. So moving on to sales and user fees. We're seeing about a 10% increase to sales and user fees. This revenue comes largely from access to our recreation facilities, like the arena, the pool, the campground, and rentals of the NPR and the train station. It also includes fees for DOSCA, fees for the cemetery, and cost-sharing revenues from Mountain View County and for the fire services and from the RCMP for operating the RCMP building. These revenues do not include utility charges. So the water, wastewater, and solid waste fees, that's a different line item. We are seeing an increase in usership combined with there had been a fee increase in 2024. So we're projecting higher revenues there for those facilities. And then our revenues from Mountain View County are expected to increase as well, specifically with regards to the fire services agreement. And that's due to the newly agreed to agreement. So moving on to franchise fees. As you know, franchise fees are collected from natural gas and electrical users in the town of Didsbury. They're collected by the utility companies and returned to the town for access to those services throughout the community. Although reviewed annually, council chose not to change the rates this year, as you're aware. But that being said, each year, ATCO and Fortis provides the town with projected revenue values. And we are anticipating that the amounts will increase overall by about $45,000. So again, we are being less conservative in this budget line, but we are basing the estimate on the projections provided by ATCO and Fortis. We will also see some of that too is with new development, we'll see higher franchise fees as well. Not the rate, but additional fees. Now we're going to jump all the way to the bottom of this list. And sorry, I didn't realize That bar is still on the bottom. Don't know why you see that.
Excuse me, each slide change, you tell us the page number, these would be helpful.
Oh, sure.
Yes, that again, with your microphone. Yes, that again, with your microphone.
Yes, with each, slide change, if you would please tell us the page number we're on, helpful.
Yeah, no problem. I can do that. So on bottom of page 23 in your binder, we'll talk about the transfers from reserves. So this year, so transfers from reserves are items that council may approve through the budget cycle or by motion of council. And they act in the same way as revenue to offset the requirement of taxation. For this year, we have 3 items that we're proposing be funded. The first is $6,000, which is interest earned on the specific purpose reserve funds and transferred into general revenue. This is a reflection of the reserve policy that was put into place in 2024, and $6,000 is the estimated interest earned on the specific purpose reserves for 2025. The second item is $60,000, which, as we spoke about in the capital project listing, would offset the cost of GIS project. And again, since nothing was spent in 2024, those funds are still in the reserve and are accessible for future projects. The final item would be $30,000 for the community or the council community grant program. Although the actual amount will depend on what the year end, if there is a year end surplus. The policy allows for 10% up to $30,000 to be reserved and then forwarded to community groups in the following year for the grant program. So currently we have the $30,000 coming in from the reserve, and we also have in the budget the $30,000 going out as operating grants. So moving on, this would be at the top of page 25 in your binder. And it's permit fees. So the town receives permit fees from, there's a little bit of traffic permits, but mostly there's also a little bit of filming permits now. But most of it is related to development, planning and development department for things like subdivision permits, building permits, safety code permits. And what we're proposing is a huge upswing in this budget line of 82%. And that's due to the expected development that we hope to see in 2025 with the subdivisions that we're expecting and to get kicked off, and then the building that'll happen in those developments. So, however, this isn't just it's not just straight revenue. There is also an increased expense related to these additional revenues for things like building inspector costs and additional engineering costs that to help us with those additional new developments. So those are kind of the most significant items in revenues. And at this point, I'll pause and see if council has any questions regarding what they just heard.
I'm interested in where offsite levies are captured in any line in our budget. So where do we put offsite levies in revenue?
So the offsite levies come in through the water department and the wastewater department, as that's what we collect levies for. However, we don't budget for them because the exact amount that comes in has to go into a reserve to be used for a specific purpose. So even if we budgeted $100, we'd have to have the transfer to reserves going out as well. So it's an in and an out, and it's a net zero on our bottom line.
It is captured in print.
It's
In the utilities department.
It's in the utility departments, so you can see the actuals in there if you're looking at the line by line, but you won't see a budget item for it. They fluctuate significantly year to year as well.
Any other questions?
No.
No.
Okay. Okay, so the next section is with regards to expenses. And again, I'll spend some time highlighting significant budget variances. We're proposing a 5% increase to budgeted expenditures for the year. And if you turn, we'll be following along on page 26 and 27. So salaries and benefits make up the greatest portion of the expense budget. The budget forecast for salaries and benefits is very specific and based on the estimated number of positions filled for the year. In the proposed budget is a 5% increase for cost of living for all employees. We have added to the budget, in addition, the full-time fire chief position, plus reinstating funding for the parks supervisor position, which had been left unfunded in 2024. Total compensation for our employees includes hourly or salary rates, plus things like benefits, pension, CPP, EI, and WCB. In this 5-year comparative overview, you can see that over time, the wages continues to increase. In 2025, we are proposing an increase of almost 7% over the prior year's budget. Included in this is multiple factors. One being that COLA has been applied across all positions. Additionally, the town offers employees benefits, which make up a large portion of the increase as well. The town has a competitive benefit package, and each year we see these costs increasing. We're projecting an increase to the benefit cost of $38,000. So of the overall cost to salaries and benefits, $38,000 is attributed to our benefit plan. The town employees are part of the local authority's pension plan, which is also known as LAP. And as part of that, the employer, which is the town, contributes to the pensions. So the rate of contribution for the town is the same in 2025. However, as salaries and wages go up, so do the contributions. So this results in an increase of roughly $15,000. The Canada Pension Plan, or CPP, has been increasing for the past several years to ensure that funds are available for future pensioners. And these amounts are set by the Canadian government. The rates this year of the employer's portion of contribution are increasing, and so are the maximums. So the impact to the town for CPP is at roughly $18,000. The town also contributes to employment insurance for each employee. The rates for EI will remain the same. However, again, with increasing wages, the amount paid by the town will increase. So it's estimated to amount to about $5,000. And then finally, the WCB premiums are paid by the town. Although we don't know the exact rates currently, we expect the premiums to increase, and as well as the maximum amount. So that results in a change of about $9,000. So of the total 7% increase in salaries and benefits, all of those numbers that I just talked about, it leaves $250,000 for the net change year over year for related to wages and salaries. And again, that's related to the cost of living impact and the changes to the positions and the impact of wage adjustments. So flipping the page in your binder, and as you can see on the screen, this is where we look at our human resources in terms of full-time equivalents. And so an FTE is what we refer to it as, is one full-time position. And in Didsbury, we have positions that are either 1,820 hours a year or 2,080 hours a year. So those are the number of full-time positions are a combination of the two. So you can see the 2025 to 2024 comparison of full-time equivalents, and we're proposing 66 full-time equivalents in 2025, which is made up of 55 full-time employees and 11 FTE of part-time employees. So the 11, and we're speaking in FTEs, so that's made up of multiple people, but they add up to 11. If we had only full-time people, it would add up to 11 full-times. So hopefully that makes sense. And comparing it to 2024, we had 55 FTE full-time positions in the budget and 10.5 FTE part-time positions in the budget. So we're just seeing an increase, even though there's some other changes happening. We have the same number of full-time positions overall, and we're proposing an additional 0.5 of a part-time position. So have I confused everybody? Good. No, just kidding. And my hope with this slide was to communicate it better to you, but as I'm speaking about it, I feel like I've done the opposite. Okay, so to speak to the cost of living adjustment that's in the budget, the Consumer Price Index, known as CPI, is a broad measure of consumer inflation and is the cost of living index most often used in determining salary increases. We have compared the cost of living adjustment approved over the last 5 years by the town and our neighboring municipalities. And the reason for that is they often act as competition to the town when speaking about our employees. So over the period of 5 years, you can see that they add up to an amount. And we can determine the total impact of COLA on the wages for that period of time. So Didsbury is proposing 5% as a reflection of the impact over time of the Consumer Price Index. A 5% increase in 2025 will bring us to a total of 11% since 2020, which is still kind of at the bottom of where our neighboring municipalities have been at for the same time period. And as a reflection, CPI for Alberta in the same time period totals 18.8%. Competitive pay is one factor that fosters workplace productivity and helps us attract and retain quality employees. And so we take that into account when proposing this tonight. So maybe, yeah, so moving on to the other expenses. On page 28, the top of 28, training, conferences and travel or professional development. The training, conference and travel budget for 2025 totals 151,190 with 41,500 for council and 109,690 for staff. Overall, this is an 8% increase. Council's budget is increased by 2,500 to accommodate mandatory training after the general municipal election for the new council. And the staff budget remains fairly consistent across most of the departments, except for we have added additional training costs in the municipal enforcement budget for the planned CPO training for one of our members or staff. Now I'll talk about professional services budget. On the top of page 29. The professional services budget line is proposed to be $257,000, which is a significant increase of 34% over 2024. So part of that, professional services include amounts paid to lawyers, auditors, assessors, engineers, planners, and building inspectors. The increases in this area pertain to legal, engineering, and building inspection services. And as I spoke about with the permit fee increases, this is where we expect to see additional costs. So for building permits and our safety code permits, the plumbing, electrical, and gas, we have an offsetting cost that is 60% of the revenue. So that is accounted for on the building inspector line. And then we're also proposing increased engineering costs to help with subdivision development and kind of construction, looking at the subdivisions that are coming into place and making sure that's all meeting the standards. So yeah, like I said, even though we are bringing in that significantly more revenue in the planning department, we're also going to be seeing these additional costs related to that, which will all result in development for Didsbury, which is positive, which will be new taxation. Okay, so moving on to repairs and maintenance, which is the bottom of page 29. The town, the town's assets must be managed, and each year we budget for routine and non-routine repairs and maintenance. So we budget for maintenance of roads, sidewalks, vehicles, buildings, parks, trails, cemetery, and our utility infrastructure. And 2024 was a unique year, which saw significantly more maintenance activities at both the Butte and the lagoons. So as you probably recall, we had a lagoon desludging project for $250,000 in the budget for 2024. And that is kind of a multi-year program. However, nothing is planned for 2025. So that's where part of the significant reduction, I wish I could get this off the bottom. Oh, there. There you go. Part of the large reduction in the R&M budget is due to that project. The other one that was significant in 24 was the Butte Standpipe project, which was budgeted for 100,000. The project itself came back to council for additional funding that is separate from this. But going forward for the Butte maintenance, we're requesting $45,000 specifically for that facility. And then everything else not everything else. Most of the other line items here are remaining the same, except two of note. So for the roads budget, we're proposing an additional $15,000, and that is just to maintain kind of the routine level of service of potholing, line painting, crack filling, those sort of things, and actually the supplies needed to conduct those maintenance activities. And then the other item is on the parks and fields line, which shows an addition of $20,000. And that is for the purchase of shale for refinishing 3 of the ball diamonds, which we'll speak to a little bit further on as well. So overall, the R&M budget is seeing a reduction of 29%. That's not fully impacted by taxes, as some of that was offset by reserves in 2024.
Can you explain why I think we paid eventually about $282,000 for the lease project? So
Yeah.
why isn't that captured there? I understand we approved the 100 in the budget.
Yeah.
What is increased, so why isn't it?
Well, we're comparing to the approved 2024 budget, and then what happened was council, in a resolution of council, approved the additional funding for the Butte. So just when we're looking at the actual 2024, I want these numbers to tie into the budget for 24. So that's why that number is accounted for like that. Okay, so another significant item, if you turn to page 30, or 2 items, are utilities and insurance. So with utilities, as you know, the town is a large user of natural gas and electricity used to operate our facilities, like our ice plant and the arena and pool complex is a huge user of those. But recently we did lock in natural gas and electricity rates. However, we still are looking at an increase to the cost overall. Partly because although the natural gas consumption rate we locked in at was lower, we will see another increase to carbon tax beginning April 1st, 2025. And then with electricity, the rate we locked in at was actually a little bit higher than we had previously. So overall, it's about a $20,000 increase to the budget, but it's been better than in previous years. So, and then with looking at insurance, insurance is both on it's liability insurance for the town, as well as on our facilities and our vehicles and equipment. So insurance is and has been unpredictable and difficult to budget for, so each year we tend to see a significant increase to insurance premiums, and we are budgeting for a 16% increase over last year. However, the renewal is typically received in early January. So if the costs come in lower than that, then that's something we could adjust for in the budget when we get the actual bill. Okay. Looking at our long-term debt and debt servicing amounts. So on page 31 of your document, you will see, so we have a 5-year projection of the amount of debt outstanding at the end of each year. And then I'll show you a 5-year projection of the debt service amount for each year. So looking at this schedule, you can see that the RCMP building loan ends in 2025. So at the end of 2025, it'll be down to 0. The Public Works building loan has its last payment will be in 2027. So it has 2 more years left, well, 3, I guess. And then the Rosebud Industrial / Valrosa servicing, that will terminate at the same time in 2027. With the Shantz servicing item, so what I'm projecting in the budget is that well, sale of land in Shantz, first of all. So with that, we will be required to pay off the land loan, but the land loan is also coming due. But then there's an additional loan for servicing Shantz, which is actually has its final payment in 2026. But I've proposed in this budget that we pay it out in 2025, given that if we do have land sales in 2025, we'll have the cash flow as well. And then hopefully after that date, it would just be any additional sales that happen coming in. So that's a little bit different than you've seen in the past, but we're just moving up one of the payments by 1 year for the Shantz loan. And then the sewage lagoon upgrade loan that runs until 2029. And then at that point, the only loan left on the books would be the East Reservoir. So the East Reservoir project, as we discussed at the most recent council meeting, is proposed to be funded from long-term debt. And at this point, we anticipate taking the debt at some point in 2025, with one loan payment coming out in 2025. So typically the loan schedules are biannual, so you pay 2 payments a year. So on the next slide, and just in the middle of page 31, this is the payment schedule, and it's a combination of debt or principal and interest payments. So this is where it's easier to see when your final payments will be made on the loans. And as you can see in 2025, it would be the final payment for the RCMP building, final payment for Shantz land, and then with the next 2 coming due or wrapping up in 2027. So go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I think this graph here even gives more weight to the fact we don't use reserves for our reservoir, which we made the right decision on. But I was looking for this debt servicing, and after we had talked about that and approved that motion, but that debt is just absorbed by the retirement to other debts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important information, I think, when we start to have that bylaw and so
Yeah,
just an observation.
I agree. And if you look on December 31st, well, let me go back to this screen. On December 31st of 2029, the only loan outstanding is that for the East Reservoir. So, I mean, I think the town is in a pretty good spot. And as I mentioned, like, debt can be used to, it allows future users of assets to pay for the assets in those years. So it's just a unique feature that a municipality has compared to a personal debt type situation, so. And again, so our debt limit is mandated by the MGA. And before we borrow, we do need to make sure we have room, but the total debt limit, I've projected it for 2024, a really high level projection, but we're expecting about 18.5 million of debt limit available. So taking on that amount of debt, and then the debt servicing, which is your principal and interest payment each year, we have almost $2.7 million available. So even with taking on the new East Reservoir loan, we wouldn't be, we would still have a significant amount of the limit available. All right, so moving on now to something more interesting. The grants and other payments to organizations on page 32 and 33. So we fund the town provides grants, operating grants and community grants to various organizations. And on September 30th, you heard from 3 of those groups: the Didsbury Municipal Library, the Didsbury and District Historical Society, which operates the Didsbury Museum, and then the Didsbury Lions Club, or shuttle bus, or community bus specifically. So the other 3 payments or grant type of grants that go out are the council community grants, which again is tied to 2024's year-end surplus, if there is one. And right now we've budgeted for 30,000 in the budget. However, that's fully offset by the reserve transfer, and it might change depending on the surplus. We also have $64,000 in FCSS grants, which is it gets paid out of the provincial FCSS funding that comes to the town. And that amount is the same as in 2024. And then part of this budget line is the payment to the Parkland Regional Library System, as we're a member of that system. And that's projected to increase to $49,737. And if you look at this, what's on the screen, that's not a little bit different than what's in your package, but you can see what's in the budget currently and the change year over year. So for the Didsbury Municipal Library, in 2024, the town provided $254,000 and $254,074, and they've requested $276,867, which is an increase of about 6.7%, or $17,000. The Didsbury, and just, I won't get into, these groups came and already did their pitch to council, so I'm not going to get into what their request is for at this time. But let me know if you need any clarifications for that. So the Didsbury and District Historical Society, or the Didsbury Museum, were paid $36,000 in 2024. and have requested 37,440 in 2025. An increase of about 4%. And then the Didsbury Lions Club Community Bus. Although they requested between 9,500 and 12,000, I just erred on the high side. 12,000 is in the budget. Which would be an increase of $2,500 or 26%. But as you all recall, that was kind of more of a range that they were requesting. So those items, I guess, would be up to council to determine the final amounts, as is the entire budget. So that's that. Now we'll go to one of the items that is significant and a little bit more specific to one department, and that's contracted policing costs on page 34. And this shows us a five-year comparative of our budgeted policing costs. So based on 4 officers for 2025, we're projecting a value of $731,873, which is an increase of about 5% or $34,000. And those are costs that come from the RCMP, and they just communicate to us what their costs will be for the coming year. And however, of note, because I know this has been talked about previously, is so we're budgeting for 4 members, but there has been sort of an interest to possibly go for an additional member or like a community liaison type member. So I expect the cost of an additional member to be about $174,000. This is not in the budget, only the 4 members are in the budget. So if you were to go this route, it would be an impact of about 3.3% on revenues from taxes. I should almost stop at this time so I can stop talking, but, or pause.
While you're on this topic,
Sure.
so what are the body worn cameras included in that cost?
As far as I know, they are. So we included the RCMP provides a 5-year projection of costs. And so all of any of the activities that they're proposing is in those costs, as well as their projected increase for if they have, yeah.
If those are, because they're due or activating in our area end of March for body worn cameras, I guess that's. I interpreted that they would be included in whatever.
Yeah,
So
I believe they are, but I could double check that.
anybody else have some? Well, she's still talking. It's great. So. Yeah.
And we can always come back if you have further questions. So transfers to reserve. So this is the reserve transfers, which are a financial commitment to future sustainability of the town's service providing assets. We are maintaining the transfers across most of the organization, but anything with a little arrow beside it means we're proposing that it goes up. So, the water utility in 2024 was 400,000, and we're proposing it goes up to 500,000 for 2025. The wastewater utility reserve, it was 125,000 in 2024, and we're proposing it goes up to 160,000, which is specifically to offset the future lagoon desludging. That'll happen kind of periodically over the next 10 or so years, and then probably ongoing. And then the final one is the roads and sidewalks reserve transfer of $100,000. I've touched on this a couple times now. But what we're proposing is to take the assessment growth revenue and put it into that reserve fund. So that would be a new reserve transfer. Okay, so it's not specific to kind of any line item, but I just wanted to go over a few other changes for 2025 that are notable. And one, so how this is laid out is the department that it impacts, the expense type, and then a little description and the budget impact. So,
Sorry, man, can we just go back?
Yeah, sure.
I'm interested in trails and pathways, it would be in, what, $8,000. I guess with pathways being on our minds, and where is that? That's rid of operating into the reserve.
Yeah.
And is there a rhyme or reason to that number? Maybe I should know that from last year's discussion, but maybe, is there a philosophy as to why that number?
Well, originally that came from an amount that was somehow derived from the ICC agreement. And yes, but I'm not, and it just has not changed since the original amount, I believe. So,
Yeah, and I just say to council, because we have that new pedestrian connectivity master plan, is that enough money if we're going to actually get serious about that plan? So I just tell the council that we should probably discuss that at some point. Because we're not getting it very far very fast with that amount. I think that's a priority for our community, and so.
Yep, that's a good point.
That's all.
Okay. Okay, so other notable changes for 2025's budget. So with the Economic Development Department, and as per resolution of council, there's an additional $5,000 in the budget for costs associated with hosting Meekie Town, the Meekie Town delegation. So that's in the general services line. Also relevant to economic development, but in the communications department is an additional $10,000 for contracted graphic design services to support the town and the economic development department marketing campaigns. So that's trying to bring some of those campaigns in-house under kind of the development of the communications department and to oversee the graphic design services for those. It might be things like pamphlets or ad campaigns as well. We already spoke about this, but in the parks budget, under repairs and maintenance is the purchase of shale of $20,000 to complete upgrades to the 3 diamonds at the ball diamonds at Didsbury Memorial Park. And then I just wanted to note this as it is a topic of conversation each year. In the Parks Department, we are maintaining the community Christmas light and garland hanging services. So that would be $12,500 for Christmas light hanging and $4,000 for the garland hanging. But there's been no increase, but we are maintaining those amounts. Also in the Parks Department, under general supplies, we are adjusting the allocation for the Communities in Bloom group and reducing it by $2,000. In 2024, we did propose 5,000. But after consideration between our director and the Communities in Bloom group, they felt that the $3,000 should be sufficient for the coming year. And then for the campground, under general services, we're decreasing the campground host costs due to the level of service reduction relative to winter camping effective September 2025. And that would be a reduction of $3,000. And then related to beautification again, but in the roads or the public works department under general supplies, we are reducing the beautification by 12,500. That budget line is typically has been used in the past several years to purchase banners, and we're at a good place with the banners at the moment. We thought for this year, we'll just pull that out and focus our beautification on the flower baskets and the Communities in Bloom, that projects that are happening. So. Any questions?
We've had a couple of things that we had talked about over the years, and lately. Internally, communications for, chambers. And the other one was some type of electronic signage to keep people informed in the community as what, because we're gonna have a radio station in there. So we had talked about that, but I haven't seen any movement in those two areas.
I can answer some of that.
Oh, sure.
Because we have voted on the motions. And if it's gonna be coming, I guess Councilor Bowser, you'd have to ask for that to come back for council consideration again. So Amanda, just administration takes direction from the motions, and if we want that motion to revive, then you would make a motion for the electronics in chambers, or you'd make a motion for the signage. So you can do that anytime during our budget discussion. And you're gonna be okay? You have hot water there? Okay.
Yeah, they inhale it.
Yeah.
Don't you want those motions made?
Well, I think you certainly make them in November 12th or 19th, because maybe you want to formulate them and just look into some of those numbers and stuff that you'd be suggesting or recommending.
Good idea.
Anybody else have questions? Those two are still there, right? Okay. So on page 37, these changes are done in the budget. They're not proposed, they are done.
That's correct. They're all in the budget.
And then the contract with graphic design services, you said that that's going to help support, we're gonna support some of that in-house. So we're gonna support some of that in-house or all of it? Will we still go external for some of that?
Well, there may be some economic development activities that would go, our plan is to bring it in-house so we can speak as one voice and kind of one theme as the town of Didsbury. But the actual campaign itself, where it's being advertised, that sort of thing we'd have to obviously go externally for those. So like if we're paying Pattison advertisement for a campaign on a bus in Calgary, that gets paid to them. But the design of that campaign, we are hoping to do that internally with the assistance of this graphic design contract service.
Because council has allocated funding to, in a couple motions over the last 6 months
Yeah,
for some of that, right? And then the other part is, I don't see a change in the active budget. So that, the operational part of the active budget is the same. And the extra money that the motions are made on would absorb what isn't coming internal. But would that funding that council made the motions on fund the internal part of that? Because it's $10,000.
mhm.
Wondering, there was no change in the 42.5.
Okay, so for the items that came to council in 2024, there was kind of a list of items that are still ongoing and will carry over into 2025. So, but those are specific items approved kind of in one-off motions to use the economic development reserve funds to pay for several different things. That is separate from what's in the budget for 2025. So on top of those items, which will carry over, there would be, there's a couple of things proposed for economic development. So one is a business survey. So that could be mostly done with our like our capacity. It's not something we would need to like spend a lot of money on, so that you won't see a big change there in the budget. There will be some advertising costs, some graphic design, but that's kind of going to be covered by our in-house communications team. And then, but it's mostly staff time to make sure we're going and getting everybody's input on that business survey and then compiling the results of it.
The 10,000, lower by communications, but it's crossing over with active.
Yeah, so the 10,000, it most likely will be used for dev stuff, but it could also be used for other town graphic design needs. So it kind of depends on the availability of the department at the time when a campaign is coming forward and what needs to be designed. But so there's other plans to have like there's a brochure that's done up, an investment attraction brochure. And so redesigning that in 2025 was on the list for ECDev as well. And then as well as an additional $5,000 in the advertising budget for economic development for some sort of marketing campaign outside of our local newspaper and local radio. So that's kind of the only increase that's expected. The Meeke Town is part of that budget, so that's an increase. An additional 5,000 in advertising for economic development, so that's an increase. But most of the other costs in that department are staying the same. When you look at like the total difference year to year, you have to look at there's actually quite a few changes because in the past, the community relations coordinator was budgeted into that department to assist with those projects. And so that position is changing. It's fully an administrative position now, falling under the CAO. And so if you look at the line by line for ECDev, the salary amounts would have decreased because of that, but a couple of the other service costs are higher this year. And I'm just going by memory, so I might have missed one or two.
No, it was just, yeah, so that $8,000 increase in expenses reflects that, so I was just a lot of pages I was looking at. So.
Yeah.
So that's where you're capturing that. You see Jocelyn has her hand up. Want her to speak.
Does she have a question from, it's from one of the counselors.
Be twice there now.
Yes, I just want to, oh, can I? Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. I have to skip out at 8 o'clock. I let Jocelyn know. So sorry, I have another meeting that I have to get to here. So just want to let the rest of council know that I will be leaving at this time.
Okay, say goodbye then.
Bye, then.
So long.
Goodbye and see you later.
Well, you won't, but all right. So thank you for all those answers and it's more clear to me now.
okay. Well, and I think if Jocelyn wants to speak, she could do the rest of the presentation. Okay, just kidding. I know. To be honest, I thought that as well. Okay, so another item of change, which is actually its own, it's kind of its own department, but so in 2025 is an election year. So we have costs pertaining to the election that we wouldn't see in the other 3 years leading up to an election. So we're looking at about $18,000 in election costs. And sorry, we are on page. We're not on any page. This is just a special slide.
It's not on the special page.
It's in there somewhere. Oh. 35. Yeah, it's a page. Okay. So $18,000 for advertising, printing, contract staffing, and other supplies for the election. About $11,000 for the purchase of new laptops for the new council. And then an additional $2,500 for mandatory training for the new council. So those costs add up to $31,500 and are new costs this year, and we would see they would drop off again in 2026. So. And that actually brings me to the end of this section, like the expenses overall for the town. So I'll ask for any questions related to all of that information, and then we're still going to talk about the utility departments.
Any questions? Yeah, reserve the rest of mine for November 12th.
Okay,
So I'll have really good ones.
okay.
Anybody, Councilmember?
On page 33, you talk about the community grant program and the FCSS, isn't that in and out? Isn't that zero impact on the budget?
Yeah, the council community grant program is, yes, an in and an out. FCSS grants, technically, yes, we have funding for them. But we do have to, with the FCSS department as a whole, we have to at least fund 20% of. So the net deficit of that department has to be 20% of the funding we receive.
That's not hard to beat.
No, it's not.
We get no credit for exceeding that either, that 20%.
No. Are there any other questions
Don't see
at the moment? No. Yeah. All right, so does everybody like this utility slide?
Awesome.
Okay, that's Adam's house. And he put his green bin out on the recycling day, so. It's recycling day.
I put all my garbage in the cooler.
No. Okay. So the utility, as you know, the town operates 3 utility services: water, wastewater, and solid waste. And these departments are funded solely through monthly service charges rather than relying on property tax revenue. And so they're what's known as self-supported departments. We'll look at both the revenue impacts and the expense impacts of each department. So for the water department, there are mainly three significant items that are contributing to an increase in the fees. The first is related to the Water Commission. So the town is a member of the Water Commission and therefore purchases water from the commission. In 2025, the fee for water is expected to increase, and this is just, I haven't confirmed this, but this is a projection. Expected to increase by 15 cents per cubic meter, which is an increase of 7.3%. That item will directly impact our revenue line, the water consumption rate that we charge. So the second item of impact is the additional debt that will be taken on to pay for the East Reservoir project. The department will see an annual additional debt servicing cost of roughly $200,000 beginning in 2026. But we expect to draw down on the debt in 2025. So the impact of half a year payment is about $100,000. And then the final significant impact is related to the water reserves. So the town contributes $500,000. Well, in the budget is $500,000 to the water reserve to pay for future water projects. And that is up by $100,000, as in 2024, we had budgeted $400,000. So with that in mind, we've calculated the proposed rates for the water department for 2025. And this is just resident or users with smaller meter sizes, so the 1 to 1.5 inch pipes. So infrastructure fee would increase from $18.15 per month to $22.75 per month. That's $4.60. And the water consumption rate would go from $3.25 per month to $3.42 per month, which is an increase of 17 cents per meter cubed. Or sorry, I was saying per month, but those are per meter cubed. So that's based on the consumption of water that you use. And as you can see, the variance is more than the change that we would see from the Water Commission. And that is because we do have an amount worked into the budget to account for any water loss that occurs or unmetered water. And then the final is the water distribution rate, which is projected to go from $1.50 per meter cubed to $1.62 per meter cubed, which is an additional 12 cents per meter cubed. With the wastewater department, we're seeing an increase to the infrastructure fee, and that's related to, so we're proposing to increase the reserve transfer in 2025 by $35,000. And so the infrastructure fee, which is a flat fee charged to all the users, would go from $9.15 per month to $10.19 per month, or an increase of $1.04. The wastewater distribution rate would actually decrease slightly from $1.50 per meter cubed to $1.45 per meter cubed. And so that's a 5-cent reduction. And then looking at the solid waste department, this department oversees the collection of your black garbage bin, your blue recycling bin, and your green compost bin. And of course, we do pay a third party, which is currently E360 Solutions, for the pickup and transportation of that waste. So part of the cost increase is related to that contract. But starting at the top on this slide, the town is a member of the Mountain View Regional Waste Management Commission. We are looking at a reduced fee for service to the commission for 2025, decreasing by 8% to $10.58 per capita. The town also pays the commission a landfill tipping fee. This is projected to increase in 2025, or I believe that's already set in place, and to $100 per ton, or is it a ton? Ton. For the disposal of residential solid waste that is collected on a bi-weekly basis. And then finally, the contracting costs with E360 worked into our contract is just a increase for inflation each year. So with all that being said, we're looking at an increase from $19.75 per month to $20.85 per month. A difference of $1.10. Also important to note is for the past 2 years, I believe, we've offset the solid waste fee with a transfer from our reserves. That is not budgeted for this year. So there's no reserve transfer. It's just, that's also making up part of that difference. So overall, and when we look at an average consumer for water, we are looking at an increase in the monthly bill of about almost $10 a month with all those. So $9.86. It's an 8% increase overall. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I can confirm that the water commission will be charging an increase of 15 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Brother?
Thank you, Mayor. As with the electrical department, you get transmission fees, management fees, all these kind of fees that add up for a kilowatt of electricity. And I see here an infrastructure fee and a consumption rate and then a distribution rate. I'm trying to get my head around all these fees, and is the infrastructure for us putting water lines in, and is if you're going to distribution to me is almost the same as consumption. You've got to get it to me. You know what I'm getting at? Do we need all these charges? I guess is my question.
Yes. Just leave it there. To elaborate, all the way that we're charging is based on we updated the bylaw probably 3 years ago, 2 years. This will be the 3rd budget year, I think, on the new bylaw, which outlines it. Actually, we're more specific as to what fees go towards what costs. So the infrastructure fee, essentially, yes, that's getting the pipes in the ground, making sure the butte exists, the new East Reservoir. It pays for anything like the reserve transfers and the debt payments. And so that's making sure that the infrastructure is always there and each user on the same size of pipe would pay the same amount every month for that. And then the consumption fee offsets the cost that we pay just for the purchase of water. So we're buying water from the commission. Even though, let's say it's not here yet, but we're buying the water, that consumption fee is just offsetting the purchase of the water. And then the distribution fee is offsetting it coming to you. And then for the wastewater service charges, it's taking your waste away to the lagoons. That's the distribution fee there. So it is based on the rate structure that council put into place.
Except I still don't figure this out my own. Thank you.
Anything else? On our utilities? Jocelyn, you have no questions? Okay,
Well, okay, so we're at the end of my presentation. I guess at this point, I would ask for, well, do you want to do your closing remarks and then we can do more if there's any other questions, or do you want to do any other questions now? Okay, so just on anything you've heard tonight or that you've reviewed in the package related to the budget, are there any questions that you have?
I think much of council took this as a presentation, so I would anticipate those questions on November 12th.
That's perfectly
We
fine.
give you a little bit of work from the capital budget, so. And I think I'm right in interpreting that, because I don't hear any or see any hands or hear anybody want to speak, so. I'll wait for closing remarks, then I'll add a few more. But I know that Ethan has some next steps and whatnot to share. So we'll let Amanda rest her voice and Ethan, do you want to tell him he can speak? Because it's probably not very often you get to.
You can speak.
Thank you. And thank you again. To all those that participated, for all the questions, discussion. And especially again to Amanda. For the outstanding presentation. We appreciate very much her work and thought that went into this. And everything about this presentation. So just a few comments about next steps and closing remarks. Thank you, Jocelyn. So up there is kind of that's the schedule going forward. That was approved by council at the meeting on June 24th, 2024. And the framework, the budget framework that we adopted for this year, and again, we'll be developing a budget policy that council can approve in the new year that will help to kind of set this type of structure, or in the end, whatever they end up passing in that policy, that will kind of keep a consistent structure year to year. But going forward is, as you see, we have 3 regular council meetings, November 12th, 26th, and December 10th coming up, as well as an additional budget meeting again as required on November 19th and December 3rd. And so for the regular council meetings, there'll be a little budget section on each council meeting going forward to allow for ongoing discussion, questions, motions, decisions about aspects of the budget as you work through it little by little. And at the start of, or for each section, for each part of the budget section, as you tackle that, we'll have a section that you can ask questions, make motions, ask for additional information. And so that's kind of the process that we anticipate going forward. And our goal is that by the time we get to December 10th, that council will have a budget that they're comfortable with approving. And so that we'll have that in place by 2025. Now, obviously, after the year end, the financials are completed. We have that additional information will be brought back again for a final review and look, see prior to setting the tax rate by law. So, any questions about any of that? What's this, that's unfolding? Okay, and then, perfect. Well, great, that's. I'll see going forward.
Great, thank you. Yes, thank you, Amanda and administrative team for all the work to get this budget presented. And like I said, this is everybody's favorite time of year, so we'll look forward to the November and December meetings, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions coming back after we've absorbed all the presentation tonight and had time to formulate some of those thoughts and questions. So again, the work done in budgets is always time consuming and takes all your attention, especially the finance department. I know all the other departments too spend a considerable amount of time putting together what their budgets should look like to be part of this package. And with that, I won't belabor the evening any longer. I'll let everybody out just, oh geez, 40 minutes early, well, 35 minutes early. No one ever complains about that. And with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn. And thank you over here to our videographer and the other people that I asked when the other staff, when they were leaving, I wondered why they weren't staying to watch the budget meetings.
Yeah.
They said they had another meeting to go to, if you can believe that. So I'll have a motion to adjourn at 8:22.
I'll move that we adjourn at the budget meeting at 8:22.
I'll call the vote, all in favor?